What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me, as always, is Shannon White. Shannon, how are you doing, my man? How's it going?
I'm doing great, feeling better. Finally starting to feel like myself again. So um real excited to pick your brain tonight and see if we're on the same page with this off season.
Oh, yeah. And it's going to be we're both expecting that if the Steelers want to make the moves in the direction that we're hoping that they're going, there's going to be some pretty big moves that need to be made this offseason. So this should be another offseason that's going to keep us on our toes, at the edge of our seats, the whole 9 yards, just to see what move is going to be made, when they're going to be making these moves, et cetera, et cetera. As of now, I mean, the Steelers signed a tight end, Donald Farham, formerly of I believe he was on the Broncos practice squad. He was on the Chargers
Hmm.
active roster not too long ago. Tall guy, 6'8". He is a little bit different than Darnell Washington in the fact that he's not like a blocking tight end like Darnell is. He's more of the pass catcher type. What do you think about the move? And is this a move that for a person that you think is actually going to stick to the team?
I think that it kind of gives them bookends. You know,
Uh-huh.
Darnell Washington 6'7" and Barnum is 6'8". Uh they can both block better than say Connor Hayward or Fryermuth. So, they're going to have two tall booking guys that hopefully they can use more in the red zone. Something we've been wanting for Mount Washington for a while now. So, if it's kind of a signal that Mikael Pruitt won't be back, I'm all for it.
Right. Yeah, Pruitt, or I mean, there's another tight end that I think could be at risk here, and that's tight end by the name of Connor Hayward.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you look at the bottom end of the depth chart there at the tight end position, it just didn't. Although they were utilized quite a bit and probably more often than most people were comfortable with, it really shouldn't have gone like that. I would have expected more of the Pat Fryer move, Darnell Washington, especially now that you have perhaps somebody like Barham who can, he's not a game changer. He's not. I mean, if he was that big of a deal, he wouldn't be on somebody's practice squad last year. But depending on the right scheme and the right plays, he might be a guy that could be useful, especially as you mentioned in the red zone where the Steelers have struggled quite a bit. I definitely can see him, hopefully, making some moves there, doing some things. Um, but when the tight end position, that's normally a position that you see a lot of over the middle of the field throws to. And there was a report this past weekend. I'm not sure if you saw it. I talked about it briefly on State of the Steelers, my Saturday episode that comes out on Steel Curtain Network audio only podcast. That's a little bit of a plug to go check that out. But, they were talking about how Mike Tomlin, I think it was Mark Caboli, maybe have mentioned this on 97.3 The Fan or something like that, that Mike Tomlin avoids the middle of the field. And the way we've seen how the tight ends have not been targeted very much throughout the past few years, does this really move the needle anyway if they go and get another tight end or replace the tight end or anything like that?
Well, you're getting guys with much larger catch radiuses,
That's true.
which, uh, would hopefully uh, maybe make them a little more comfortable throw it to them. Uh, Guys of that stature over the middle. Because Connor Hayward is really undersized for a tight end. He's
Mhm.
more of a smaller H back, actually.
Correct.
And I've been really high on him as a utility guy, but it just never panned out. I don't think they could justify bringing him back. Um, if he makes the team again, that's a bad sign because they need an upgrade at tight end and at fullback. When they do want to utilize one.
Yeah.
And Pruitt was, he's Arthur Smith's guy, just like Cordell Patterson, but just wasn't a good fit. So I'm perfectly fine with the direction they're going now. We obviously there's not going to be the coaching changes
Mhm.
that we all kind of was hoping for. So I think they're looking at it as they have all this money that they usually have never had to address free agency. They're more creative now in how they utilize the draft with Khan and Waddle. So there could be a real influx of talent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it sounds like Rooney and company feel like that it was a talent issue more than a coaching or schematic issue.
Hmm.
So I believe that that's the plan. They're really going to try to reshape the roster, bring in more weapons, have more, hopefully balance on both sides of the football. But, me and you've talked many times in the last couple of years. It was obvious Tomlin avoids the middle of the field. And there's no doubt, because we heard it from Kenny Pickett, we'd heard it from Rudolph, different guys saying, avoid the middle of the field, throw outside the number, play it safe. Because Tomlin's all about, if we win the turnover margin, you win the game. How many times has he talked about that in his in-game presser or his weekly press conference? So that has got to change. They have to be more risk reward, focus moving forward, because with low risk also comes low reward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm and throwing over the middle has been something that, although it's finally being reported ish, I guess. I mean, it's remarkable. He's an NFL Pittsburgh Steelers insider. He's on with Pat McAfee now, and I strongly suspect what he's saying is true. The proof is in the pudding. You can just go back and look at the last, I don't know how many quarterbacks that the Pittsburgh Steelers have had. Just go and look at their next gen status or stats for almost every game. And the middle of the field is like, it's like you would have thought that the entire defense was just lined up there and that they were allergic to it. And so, going after, I guess, like a tight end, practice squad or not, this guy's he got the radius, the ability to go up there and catch the ball. Hopefully they utilize him, and that's especially in the red zone, like as we mentioned before. But over the middle of the field throwing, that needs to change. The philosophy of playing in your fears has to change, because this has become a point where, all right, the Pittsburgh Steelers can play this game where they just protect the football, and they're going to beat most teams, but they're not going to beat the good or the great teams. And those are the teams that you're going to come up across when it comes time to go into the playoffs. This is the reason why the Steelers have been blown out of the playoffs every year they've played or participated in the playoffs. This is going back to 2016/2017 loss or win to the Kansas City Chiefs there. Now, hopefully they change some things up. Maybe this move here might be a move, just kind of the beginning of that, but we'll see. It's probably tight end number 3. Typically, I would say it's not much to see, but when you look at what Arthur Smith has done with the bottom of the depth chart, when it comes to the players that he utilizes, they get used quite a bit. Every tight end, I think, had quite a bit of snaps throughout this past year, and even at times that we probably didn't think they should have.
Yeah, I think that, if they can improve the talent, and give these guys more freedom to play the modern game, I think that we'll see hopefully some of the changes and improvements we want to see. I've said before that here the Steelers is defense top heavy, especially in salary, payroll. But I think this draft, they need to focus a good bit on the defense. Now, the reason I say that is because, to get the defensive tackles that they need, to get another corner, you'll be able to get that cheaper, in the draft because it's top heavy. There's a lot of good defensive tackles in this draft class. And then you could use that money to get more proven commodities, let's say with a slot corner, wide receiver, stuff of that nature that can pay immediate dividends. But, Claude just give us 5, talking about they could have Andrews and Kelsey and they still wouldn't know how to use them. And as far as the coaching staff, I agree. But again, it sounds like it's coming from the head guy. The head coach is the one saying, don't throw over the middle, living how they utilize the tight end. If Freiermuth had any value right now, and I don't know how he's viewed around the league, now would be the time, in my opinion, to move him. And because there is some guys that are more true combo tight ends in this draft that can block and receive. And that I would like to see them look at, say, second round.
Mm-hmm.
And they need all the draft capital they can get.
What would you give up half for him? What do you think he'd go for right now? Maybe a fourth, maybe a third?
I think you could hope for a third.
Mm-hmm.
Probably more of a fourth, but I think you could hope for a third.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think when it comes to Pat Freiermuth in this offense, it hasn't been the greatest of fit because his blocking has been somewhat suspect. There's been times where it's been because of injury or other things that we can say it was, but at the end of the day, it's been suspect. And if you're going to be running the ball in the manner that the Pittsburgh Steelers want to, you're going to need a tight end that's going to want to and be able to put their face in the pile and move. And not saying that he's not capable or hasn't been able to, but he's dealt with some injuries and things of that nature. And I think that's another component as well, is he's had a few concussions there over his time frame here in Pittsburgh that maybe perhaps you might start to consider that as an option. I hope not. I like the kid. I think he's great. I have his jersey. I have an autographed jersey as well. So it'd be pretty unfortunate if he ended up moving off. But I do think you're absolutely right. If there is a player that you're gonna move off from that has perhaps that higher, that could command such draft capital, it may be him. But yeah, he can receive the ball.
One thing about it, let's think about it proactively. Kelsey's getting older.
Correct.
And I don't know if he has another offseason that he doesn't focus on football. It greatly impacted him this past year. And as you get older, you got to stay in shape year round.
Mm-hmm.
And he definitely did not. What would Kansas City be interested in Pat Freiermuth? To be that receiving tight end to work with Kelsey, so when Kelsey does leave, I mean, they've been showing a lot of Heath Miller. I think it was Heath Miller's birthday, like last week or 2 weeks ago, and watching a lot of highlights. And man, you just miss that guy. I mean, I don't know. He might have been one of them guys that we all took for granted.
Yeah.
I mean, I admit it. I mean, I love the guy, and I still don't think I ever really valued him as good a player as he was. He was a great security blanket for Ben. He always worked back to him. He got open. He had great hands. He was an all-effort blocker. I mean, you can trust him to block a defensive end. That's so valuable. That's one reason why the running game was so good. So, if you can move Freiermuth, who are you going to move him to? And I think he could be a good fit with Andy Reid and Mahomes there at Kansas City.
Yeah, he definitely could be, but drafting that late in the round, that's definitely a third round pick there. Because
yeah, I agree. Yeah,
drafting too late there, I think that would I think that would be the only way I would move him there, if not something a little bit higher as well. But I mean, the offseason is just around the corner. There's going to be a lot of moves, and one of the biggest things that just happened here recently is the extension of the salary cap. it increased quite a bit. I think it's upwards to like 280 or something like that. I don't know the numbers. We'd have to get probably Dave Schofield on the line to get the numbers for that, but it is extended more. How do you see, or how do you think that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to use some of this money? Do you think they're going to hold on to it? There's been, I want to say, the last couple of years, the Steelers have had some money in their pocket at the end of the year that they could have used. Or you think they're gonna use it all this time around, really go in hard in the paint, so to speak, when it comes to the free agency?
I think they're going to lean into it because they have to justify keeping the status quo with the coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the fans are not happy, the vast majority, and but they're saying, hey, it's a talent issue, and we're going to really focus on building the roster. And I'm fine with that. But to do that, you're going to have to spend.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I would like to see them bring in 2 quality receivers, more so than just one high price guy. Because there was a lot of talk about Higgins, but he's going to be franchise tagged, or if he hasn't already. So there's guys out there like Goodwin from Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's a quality receiver. Then there's other guys that are like, you don't want to, in my opinion, an Adams or a Hopkins. These guys are older and they've played with, Adams had most of his success with Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr. And I don't see him being a good fit to come into Pittsburgh. But there is guys they can sign. And then this is a pretty good draft class. So it shouldn't be that hard to add 2 or 3 receivers.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't. The draft is one avenue, free agency trading is another. If they were to go after one of these bigger named guys, I still think maybe Cooper Kupp might be a guy that I would like to see. He's more of a possession wide receiver. He's not going to be your every day or every down wide receiver that's going to be out there. Your Antonio Brown. I don't think, he's up there in age now and has had some injuries and things of that nature. And so, but obviously it would have to determine or depend on how much he's going to cost and the trade capital there to get him away for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But yeah, they've got a lot of moves to make, receivers, running backs. The biggest one is quarterback. That still hasn't been taken care of either. And, I think the only position that I can say when you look at the offensive side of the ball that probably has majority, if not all their players there, is going to be the offensive line. And that's still a question mark on its own. I think that we can probably expect Frazier and Fautanu coming back. That's probably going to be an improvement to your offensive line. Frazier is going to have another year. Broderick's going to be the big question mark. I think he's going to end up finding himself on the left side. Do you think any chance that Dan Moore finds himself back on the roster?
Oh, I sure hope not. I mean, I'm just being honest. Even last year when the season started and he kind of was playing a little over his head, had some favorable matchups, and people, were saying, "Oh, he's experienced, 4 years starter, he's ready." He never impressed me. And then as the competition improved, his performance, the bottom fell out. So I seen him ranked as like the first or second highest ranked left tackle available in free agency. Hey, go for it. Pay him. Whoever. Take him, please. Just slide Broderick over. Play him where he's supposed to be. Put Fautanu at right tackle. And let's give these guys a chance to develop.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they definitely I want to see that. I want to see Broderick on the left side at his normal position.
Yeah.
I thought he played well I thought the best he played was on the left side when Dan Moore went down with an injury his rookie year. Um, you know, I think that if they can gel, and last year they played rough. It was rough, but if you remember, the offensive line never really played together until what was it, like 4 or 5 games into the season when they finally got started to play together. The offensive line that was going to be the offensive line for that year after the James Daniels injury. But prior to that, even throughout preseason, they were getting moved around one place here, one place there, trying to figure out things. Injuries were going astray. I mean, it was supposed to be Broderick Jones on the left side from the get-go. That didn't happen. And then, they started and they started to get together and they started to build. I think towards the end of the year, that rookie wall really did take a toll on the offensive line with the rookies that they had in there. And I expect them to be a lot better this season. I think that's probably going to be, you're looking at maybe potentially adding a swing tackle for sure. McCormick is probably the biggest question mark as far as who's going to, if there's anybody who's not going to be a starter this upcoming year. I think he's going to be the only one that could be the biggest question mark. But outside of that, I think everybody is set in stone, so to speak. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think McCormick, coming from the college he came from and the level of the not being a Power 5 school, the weaknesses, the warts, whatever you want to call it, started to show up late in the season as you hit a rookie wall. So it was a bad combination. I thought Frazier's performance was solid all year. And I think Fautanu coming from Washington would have been fine. But I think that McCormick, that was a lot to ask. I'd like to see him this offseason get stronger, work on his lateral movement. You don't have to be, the footwork that Fautanu has, but he has to be more laterally, be able to move better laterally than he was this year. If he's going to play in this scheme. But I think the line can take a big jump forward. One thing that I noticed a huge difference, even when they would bring Fields in for one of these 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 plays, he would just many times just hand the ball off and just take a few steps to his side, and he would have 2 guys go with him. Yeah, because they were so scared of him keeping the ball and getting outside. It keeps defense. It keeps the edge guys honest. It keeps your safety and your outside and your inside backer on that side honest, because they can't cheat, because they got to pay attention to Fields. So if they can bring Fields back, or they have that mobility at quarterback again, it makes the job easier for the offensive line.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Running it back also with either or brings a little bit of familiarity for the entire team and some chemistry as well. So we'll definitely see how that goes. And we're going to talk about more about that quarterback position when we get back from the break. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break. Be back after a few words from our sponsors. Yeah, and we're back. Welcome back to the Hangover. I'm Daniel, alongside with me Shannon White. Before we get back into the conversation, I want to remind you guys of our website, SteelCurtainNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Make sure you go check that out once we're done here. Get your up-to-the-minute news on the Pittsburgh Steelers. If there's breaking news to be had, it will be on that website. And while you're there, you can check out our audio only podcast, which include mine that airs out on Saturdays. So that being said, let's get back into the conversation. Claude asks and start this, second half with a super chat, $2 super chat asking, would you resign James Daniels? That's a yes for me. We'll start off with you, Shannon. Would you sign James Daniels if given the opportunity?
I've always been a big fan of his since before he came to Pittsburgh. I think he's been the Steelers' best lineman easily during his tenure. Until this year, I think Frazier was. But, of course, Daniels got hurt early. I just am afraid of the Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
Me and you talked. You've had the injury. Trying to push off against guys the size of these defensive linemen nowadays. If they've come so far now, and these guys get more range of motion. I remember back in the day, a lot of times guys would have almost what we call drop foot. Mm-hmm. If they'd ever had an Achilles injury, they never got that range of motion and that strength fully back in that Achilles and everything. I think they've come much farther now, but it would have to be the right price, to take the risk because he's going to be also rated one of the best guards, probably the top guard, if he hadn't had that injury. So, how much is somebody going to give him? And I don't think the Steelers should be the one paying because, until he proves it, I would be leery.
I would too. I mean, I'm not, he's still a part of the roster. I'm sure that he's doing his rehab there in the building. Yep. The Steelers have seen him. They probably have a gauge of where he's at and where he's projected to be at. I wouldn't be opposed to it either, but like I said, it all kind of depends. The Achilles tendon rupture, as you mentioned, is one that's hard to come back from. And I mean, we saw some other players here recently who don't have to utilize their leg in the same manner. Like, for instance, Aaron Rodgers, a couple of quarterbacks that just didn't come back the same.
And that's quarterback.
Exactly. When it comes to James Daniel, I'll share this. When I went to the training camp back, 2021, I think that was the year the Steelers drafted Pickett. And that was his first year that he was a part of the team. And I was excited about James Daniels, and that didn't change. But I remember when I first saw him come out on the field, he had knee braces and ankle taped and everything on both sides. And he just kind of like shuffled his way out to the middle of the field. And I was just like, all right, well, I was wondering if he was going to be that explosive, guard that's going to be trapping, moving, pulling. I didn't think that after that first day. And now when you add an Achilles tendon rupture on top of that, it just doesn't give me the most confidence in that he's going to be able to hold up like that against some of these teams. And, more power to him if he's able to come back and do it. I hope him the best, and I hope he does, regardless of where he goes, because, at the end of the day, he's a young man, and this is his, career and his dreams. And I hope him the best. I just not sure if he's going to get to the level that he was.
I only think he's like 28. He's still young, and he's been in the league 7 years.
Yeah. He's been in the league a minute. He was very young when the Pittsburgh Steelers acquired him. Yeah. And I think a lot of the things that a lot of folks liked about him was that his ability to move inside. Also, he could have been a center. He plays guard. He's played center before, but we've also seen what Ryan McCullen can do, and filling in for Frazier. And I thought he did enough that I'm not worried about that position. If Frazier if Frazier went down for a game or two, McCullum had to come in. Before I was kind of worried. Could Herbig handle that? Is Daniels the best option to slide into the into the center position there? And after McCullum's performance this past season, I think we'll be okay there. And so it comes.
I think personally that McCullum was better than Cole.
Yeah.
And I thought McCollum did an excellent job filling in for Frazier. And so, yeah, as you say, I'm more confident about our center position than anywhere on the offensive line right now.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think that, even with both Andersons, playing, I think they played okay. The guard position, although isn't an easy position to play, it's not a tackle position. You're not left out in the open. You don't have to snap the ball, those type of things. And so, if you had a weak point, you don't want a weak point, but if you had a weak point, it's probably the best place to have a weak point on the offensive line. You don't want your tackles to be your weak points. You don't want your center either. And so I think McCormick, let's give him another year, another training camp, and let's see what he can do.
You got to love his attitude.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, he blocks to the whistle. He's very physical. It won't be a lack of effort. And I've always said, if you be the guy that's willing to pay the price, to put in the work, he can get better. And I believe in McCormick more than I believe in Meyer, the guy trying to coach him to his full potential. I do believe in McCormick more than I believe in Meyer.
Yeah, I do too. And again, like as we mentioned before the break, the biggest position hasn't been addressed either, and that's who they're going to be protecting. That's the quarterback position. And here recently, we've had a little bit more news, a little bit more about what the Steelers are doing behind the scenes. And according to Albert Breer, the Pittsburgh Steelers have thrown their hat in the ring when it comes to Matt Stafford and the possibility of trading for quarterback Matt Stafford from the Los Angeles Rams. Quarterback up there in age, was in the playoffs this past season. I think he still has some juice in the tank. I'm not sure, how much more he has in there, but he is a name. I thought that, looking at a bunch of the players that are out there that are available, whether to trade or free agency, he's up there in the higher end of my list, of the list that's probably not wouldn't be too high on when you look at like the other years of quarterbacks that are free agency. This isn't a great free agency year for QBs, but we have Matt Stafford, who's not a free agent, potentially up there for trading. What do you think about the potential trade? What do you think about the thoughts that the Steelers are putting their hat in the ring for that trade?
Man, it's I've heard one report that the Steelers have shown interest, and I've heard another report that they're not interested at all. I've heard that they're interested in Geno Smith out of Seattle. I've heard they were interested in Daniel Jones. I mean, we were talking before the show. There's so many rumors, and we're not hearing nothing about Fields and Wilson, which I love Stafford. I love how he throws the football. He's got a great arm, one of the best spinning the rock that I've ever seen. But again, my concern is he comes from a warm climate, a dome. He's throwing to Puka Nacua at Cooper Cup, playing in McAfee's offense there in LA. I mean, he will have none of that luxury if he comes to Pittsburgh. And as much as I would love to have him, if he was coming and bringing Puka Nacua and Cooper Cup with him, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. But it just ain't going to be like that. And you have to look at the big picture. And how does these guys match up? And are they a good fit? Again, Daniel Jones, I'm not interested. Honestly, I think that, as much as I'd like to see Stafford, I think at this point in his career, he wants to have a chance to win a title. And I don't think Pittsburgh's the answer for him. And I think the Steelers are either going to go a route like try to get Fields again, give him the keys to the offense, let him show what he can do. If it doesn't work, you'll have to try to address something in free agency or the draft next year. But I just don't. As much as I'd love to have Stafford, I just don't think they got the team in place for him to come in and be successful.
I don't disagree with you that the team isn't the same, or the offensive scheme isn't the same, or any of those things. I think you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head. I just don't think that the Steelers are as confident as most people are saying or thinking when it comes to Justin Fields and or Russell Wilson. There was a lot of this talk last year that, hey, we like what Mason Rudolph did. He did an amazing thing. Rooney came out. Rooney and Tomlin could not finish a conversation about the quarterback position without talking about how well Rudolph did, even if Rudolph wasn't brought up by anybody else in the conversation. And this time around, it doesn't even seem like that's happening. Outside of one word thing that said when Tomlin was asked, is like, would you consider bringing Justin Fields back and having him in the pole position? And he said, yeah, we would consider him. But that was about it. That was the extent of that. I mean, there's been some other rumors that have gone in and out that they're excited to bring him back. They want to bring him back. But yet, last thing I think I've heard was that that there was some mutual interest between Justin Fields and the Jets, which again is rumors, this, that, and the third. But it did sound like, based on the people that it was coming from, that there might be more reality set there. And if there's some reality there and the Steelers haven't offered him a contract yet, free agency is just around the corner. I really think that speaks some volumes. I mean, let's also not forget that they had an opportunity to get Justin Fields last time a couple of times. It wasn't until Kenny Pickett asked to be removed before the Steelers finally pulled the trigger on that trade. Justin Fields was one of the last persons to get pulled off from trade or whatever the case may be last year in free agent or during the offseason. And so I don't know. I tend to, when it comes to the Steelers, I've come to find out to watch what they do, not what they say. And even though they've said a lot of things about Justin Fields, I've heard this before when it comes to other quarterbacks and other positions and it not work out right. I just feel like the fact that they're putting their hat in this ring for Stafford, the fact that we're hearing this, the talks about the Trevor Lawrence, regardless of how serious it was or not of those conversations, I don't think you have those conversations if you're pretty, mindset that you have the guy in the building. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always said about Rudolph from the moment they drafted him that I thought he could be a quality backup. And I never thought he was a starter. And he come in and give the Steelers life and help them make it to the playoffs and really save the season. Did his best Rudolph impersonation for real there at Christmas time. But when he went to Tennessee, I heard people say, well, he has a real shot there because Levis is young and, they already got rid of Willis. And Willis went to Green Bay. But I think the Titans tried to give Rudolph a chance to win that position last year because they got frustrated with Levis. And he again proved that he's a really good backup and in the right situation. But if he has to play too much, he will be exposed. And so even though they were saying all the right things, I never thought they were going into last season with Rudolph. Me and you had this discussion multiple times. I wasn't expecting Rudolph to be the starter. I thought it was Kenny Pickett's job to lose. And, he never proved that he was a starter, capable quarterback either.
Right.
And so he went to Philly and was the backup and won a title. But I don't ever expect him to be a starter in the NFL. So what they have now is, if you try to roll it back with everything you had last year, but just add more talent, the same coaches, the same scheme, same everything. And they think we're just going to add more talent through the draft and free agency. You have to bring Fields or Wilson back.
Right.
And I think Wilson is past his expiration date.
Right.
And I just do not think. I mean, anybody would like to have more skill. They need more skill position talent at
Right.
receiver, at tight end, and running back, and that would make it better for Wilson, obviously.
Right.
But I think that if they really want to have something that could be more than just a 1 year rental, because if you get Stafford, you're looking at a 1 to 2 year max. Wilson's the same thing. Cousins, any of these guys. The only guy out there with the age and has any hope, I think, of being a starter eventually, and in the right system would be Fields.
But here's the thing with that. So, like Mark says, they never believed in Mason. I'm not sure they ever believed in Fields either. The guy went 4-2, and they still pulled him out. There was another NFL insider. I talked about this on State of the Steelers this Saturday. He spoke about how there were some people in the Steelers office who wanted to go back to Fields at the end of the season, but they were overruled, and they chose to go with the experience of Russ into the playoffs. But that there were people in that office that wanted to go back and forth. But even in that moment when there was some doubt with the quarterback, they still didn't go back to him. And so I just don't see. I hear the confidence in what they're saying. I just don't see the confidence in what they're doing when it comes to
actually,
Fields.
I don't think they got confidence in either.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
I think that the hope is that you could bring, if Fields does want to come back and go through it again, with more talent, skill position talent around him, and be familiar with Arthur Smith's offense after playing 6 games in it, and that hopefully they can develop some confidence. But again, that's never been Tomlin's strong suit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's quick to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, we're going to start Trubisky. We believe in Trubisky. And then, and it isn't panning out real quick to begin the season. We're going to put Kenny Pickett in, and then we're going to do this. I mean, again, some coaches inherit situations and quarterback situations, and they haven't had to develop that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And until proven otherwise, I question whether Tomlin can do it.
I mean, they're not only developing, but also evaluating the quarterback position. I mean, he also
faith in the guy. I mean,
he evaluated Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
He evaluated Kenny Pickett. I mean, he evaluated some of these other guys, even Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, to come out and play and be a part of the team. And regardless, like I said, I mean, I thought Justin did okay. I thought that if just being 100% honest, I thought he got figured out. By weeks, what was he? Went 4-2. So by the 6th game, I thought that, the offense with what Arthur Smith and Justin Fields were trying to do was figured out. And that I felt that's why it wasn't, looking like it had looked early on. And I felt kind of the same way with Russell Wilson and Arthur Smith at the end of the season there, when they lost 5 games in a row. I felt like they got figured out. Russell Wilson, what he was trying to do, when and where he was going to do it at, was either going to be a short pass or a home run. There was nothing in between, nothing in the middle. He was avoiding the middle of the field, something that he's done majority of his career, but even more so because, there was still a time in his career where he really targeted the tight ends, and that wasn't even happening here. And so, once they got figured out, it felt like that's what ended up happening. And I think that had more to do with the offense and the struggles that they had, as far as, it's not so much talent as much as they were doing the same thing over and over again, and couldn't pass that. And so,
do you think that had Fields led them back against Dallas, and they took the lead with a little over 2 minutes, and then they let Dallas keep converting third downs and fourth downs and drive down and score right at the end? If the defense would have held, and they would have been 5-1 after 6 games, I don't think they would have changed.
I don't know. See, I don't think they would have changed. I think that even if they would have, if the same thing would have happened, they would have gone 4-2. If that last game against the Raiders looked better passing wise, there was some passes there from Justin that just didn't look right. There, I think he had a couple of them that were dropped that could have been interception in that game. He wasn't the most accurate in that game. I felt that if he really would have played better and put up a couple of scores through the air, I think he would have kept his job for at least another week. Now, had they won the Dallas game also, and he continued to play, and he played in that manner, I think he would have won it again for another week. I think he would have kept it. I think it would have been harder to bench somebody at 5-1 than 4-2. I mean, that's tough. But at the end of the day,
but I don't think that the offense would have ever looked like it did, let's say, the Cincinnati game, when Wilson had everything cooking, and they were attacking Cincy down the field. They were never going to give Fields that freedom, that call those same plays.
Yeah,
that's why Tomlin wanted to go to Wilson, because he had more faith in Wilson than he did in Fields, and Wilson did a good job protecting the football for the most part until it got towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
But even then, I remember they would get behind, and and we'd all be like talking on Slack and everything about, oh, they're playing like crap. I've seen enough of this. And then Wilson would hit a couple of deep balls and get them in the end zone. And then you're like, well, at least they finally starting to play. I mean, it was almost like that they had to get behind to try to take the shackles off a little bit.
I agree. I mean, it's to me, I felt like some of those shackles that you speak of started to really go on around that time. There was also like a couple of interceptions that he threw, Russell, that is in the end zone. I think one against the Ravens in Pittsburgh. I was at that game. It went just over Darnell Washington's hands, and there was another one. And I remember Tomlin making the statement, I just wish he wouldn't have thrown the ball. And I think that after that aspect, I think we did start to see a little bit of a difference there. Maybe there was a little bit lack of trust, and because there was some the reports are that Arthur Smith and Russ Wilson maybe didn't see eye to eye as far as what Russ was doing on the field in Cincinnati, and that those things changed after that as well. I don't know. Do you buy that?
I buy it from the aspect of, I think it's coming from Tomlin, not Smith.
Yeah.
And I think that you've seen Ben, when you talk about Ben and Russell Wilson, you're talking about Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. And these guys are like, I know I can win. Let me go out and win.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, for 3 quarters, it looked bad his last year with Canada. And the team just did not look good. And how many fourth quarter comebacks did they have? Because he just like, screw it, I'm calling my own plays. I'm doing this. He would throw across the middle. He would throw, and they would score, 3 or 4, times in the fourth to get in the game or take the lead.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the reason that Wilson was getting frustrated is he was trying to stay within the confinements of the offense as it was being called, basically by Tomlin. And then some of these deep passes and all were him improvising. Because if you're a great player and you're a proven player, you're like, I can do this. Mm-hmm. Especially when you prove it and you're successful. So that's the problem with, you think it's going to be any different if they get Stafford or they get another veteran guy who's been won it all. And he's going to be like, no, I ain't playing like this.
Probably Rodgers.
Stafford likes to do no-look passes. And, he's very creative, like Mahomes like.
Yeah.
And I don't know how comfortable Tomlin would be with that.
The only quarterbacks I do think that maybe would have some sort of luxury like that probably be an Aaron Rodgers.
No.
I know you don't want him. I don't want him either, but I
Oh,
think
Lord.
he's probably the only person that's going to be able to go in there and maybe say I'm going to play this style of offense and play that style of offense that he chooses. Not saying that that's the best option, but he's probably the only player that can have that option to play his choosing.
Well, you look at the talent that the Jets had with Brees Hall and the running backs, with Adams and with Garrett Wilson, and Rodgers was not successful.
right.
I heard somebody talk about his numbers were pretty good. I mean, statistics are meaningless because a lot of them came in the late in the games and they didn't result in wins. They just resulted in padded stats.
Right. But what I'm referring to is like, I don't know if you remember the scene where Sean Payton is just laying into Russell Wilson. He's just yelling at him like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you would ever see anything like that happen with like an Aaron Rodgers. I think that he would, stand toe to toe. Like if somebody was trying to tell him, one of these offensive coordinators like an Arthur Smith, like, hey, I want you to do this. I think he's probably the only quarterback that's out there that'll probably stand up and say, no, I'll do this. But with that being said, he's probably a reason. That's probably a reason why they wouldn't bring him on, is because he wouldn't be that yes man. I'm going to do what you want me to do in the framework of how you want me to do it in. And
I think that was ridiculous that the Broncos ownership allowed that to go on in the first place. There is ways to handle situations after the game behind closed doors. You can, if that would have been Rodgers, say Wilson would have gotten Peyton's face and acted like a fool, like Peyton did to him. Mm-hmm. That's all we'd heard about. Yeah. It's the blatant disrespect. But because it was the reverse, and the coach knew that he could get away with that because of Wilson and the type of individual he is. Like you said, if that would have been a lot of guys, you might have had a brawl on the sidelines.
Yeah.
And I thought that was totally unprofessional. And we should never have been handled that way.
No, I agree. But at the same point in time, I'm just thinking that, Wilson is kind of like the politician type, Mitch Trubisky type. Yeah, whatever you want me to do. Yes, sir. Say everything right, do everything right. Now, maybe behind closed doors, it might be different. I don't know. I don't know them personally, but I just felt like if you're going to want somebody who's going to stand up and say, no, if I see this, I'm going to throw it here. That's probably somebody of that stature. Maybe a Matthew Stafford might have that type of command or control or confidence, from a Mike Tomlin to say, all right, we'll let you cook. We'll let you do what you want to do. But if it's somebody who's like the Justin Fields or even like the Matthew Stafford, not the Matt Staffords, the Sam Darnolds of the world, I think those are going to be the guys that you're looking at are more like game manager type, that they're going to have to work within the framework of what the plays are. And that's going to come with its pros and cons. We're going to be looking at probably more protection of the football, but more 3 and outs and less throws over the middle of the field, as what we've seen primarily for the last few years.
And like I said, it was even men, and men was a risk taker. He was a gunslinger, but he had it towards the end. He was gun shy. Yeah, that's when I started to realize that this is coming from the top. Because that was never. The only thing we all knew, Ben didn't like play action. And he admitted he didn't like play action. He did not want to turn his back to the defense. And
I think Kendrick Green had a lot to do with why he was getting rid of the ball so quick too. Not gonna lie.
You wouldn't want to turn your back with Kendrick Green guarding your blind side or backside.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was he was getting rid of the ball quick and stuff, but yeah, I mean, it's just been a frustrating few years. Hopefully they can turn some things around. Now, whether it's Matt Stafford or Justin Fields or even Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to be going for the Steelers, whoever it is that's going to be the quarterback.
I don't want Aaron Rodgers though.
I didn't want Russell Wilson last year. I'll be honest with you. I think I even put it in the Slack chat. I put anybody but Russ. And
what do you think of Geno come available?
So Gino is like a Mason Rudolph game manager. We're not going to see anything different. Um, I think that he's going to protect the ball. I feel like a lot of like maybe 2019 Mason Rudolph, protection of the ball. He's going to do what the coaches want him to do. If he were to be an option,
I do think he anticipates very well. I think he throws to a point, his ball placement, that he leads guys to openings. He relies on them to get there. Now, I don't know if I would trust Pickens to get there.
Yeah.
But the rumor this week I seen was that Cortland Sutton might be in play for the Steelers as somebody they could acquire, whether they bring Russ back or not. And Cortland Sutton would be a big upgrade at the receiver position.
I agree. I think with that chemistry and that history, even though it was a couple of years there for Russell, that could be also something there as well. But I don't know. I mean, when do you think we're going to find out for sure about this quarterback room? You think that's gonna take all the way up until the first day of free agency before a move is made, or do you think that's because obviously if there's going to be a move made beforehand, it'll be an in-house one. So do you think it's going to be in-house, or do you think it's going to be at the end of the day? Where do you think it's going to be at? If you had to put your money on it today,
if I was going to do it, I would go ahead and do side fields now, because the only thing that could happen is that somebody will make him a better offer and force your hand to pay more than you're wanting to pay at the moment.
Right. But I mean, even though there's no tampering period or whatever, they find their way of talking, whether it's at the combine or at these owner meetings or randomly hanging out the golf course, the agent talking to a team or to another team like, hey, what do you think about this? I just feel that that's already happening. They're already gauging, other teams are already gauging what Justin Fields is going to want, what he's going to, what they're going to be able to offer to him as far as that potential starting position. I just don't see that I think if you're going to give him that opportunity to go out there and this is your guy, that's a big risk. That's a huge risk. Because, you can definitely lose your guy there. I mean, look at what happened with the wide receiver position this entire last season. The Steelers they hung everything on the fact that they were going to end up getting Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel, one of those two receivers out of the 49ers. And look at what they ended up having. I mean, they got Mike Williams at the trade deadline and used him like 3 times. So,
yeah, it was a disaster. Yeah.
It absolute disaster. So, I would think that if you don't want to go through that again, where you have your mindset on a player like, hey, Justin Fields is our guy. We're going to run this, mobile quarterback, option quarterback type of stuff. We're going to game plan for this. We're going to start, building our team around this player, but we're also going to let him go and test free agency. I don't think that those two things exist in the same world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't like it. If I'm going to do it, I'm doing it sooner rather than later.
Exactly. And so to me, that means that. That's just me personally. That's my opinion. I'm thinking when the dust settles, it's probably going to be somebody from outside of the organization that's going to end up being a huge component to QB1. Not saying they're going to give him QB1 because the Steelers do weird things, but they say and they'll acknowledge starters at random times. But I think that person will eventually be from somebody off of the roster that's not on there right now. What do you have any final words there, Shannon, for everybody before we call it a show?
No, I'm just like everybody else. I'm ready to find out and get that quarterback so we at least have an idea of what we're looking at and what we needed this offseason and go from there. So I'm hoping it's sooner rather than later.
I do too. I hope that it's something that we're going to end up getting some information, some news is going to break. We're going to know something soon. But if not, we're going to have to wait in just a few more weeks with everybody else. But thank you guys for tuning in. Please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Ring that notification bell. Again, Shannon will be back on Pump Your Brakes on Wednesday. I'll have the State of the Steelers podcast. It's audio only, airs out on Saturdays. Wherever you find your podcast, make sure you go check out SteelCurtainNetwork.com right now. With that being said, Shannon, take us out, my man.
Woo!